We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job! You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. It's Split Zone Duo. I'm Alex Kirshner here with Richard Johnson. Conference realignment. It's June, and like manna from heaven, Pete Thamel of ESPN just the other day dropped an update on the state of the Pac-12's expansion efforts. And Richard, one of the things that I noticed was that the school that has made the most public campaign to be in FBS and is in the West Coast is not included, is mentioned nowhere in the article. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I think that there has been a groundswell around Sacramento State in a lot of different ways over the last, call it, year or so. Whether it's the so-called $50 million kitty for NIL, which is certainly up to $50 million and was pledged, not actually money, cash that they had on hand. Different story entirely. They've been rattling sabers about trying to be upwardly mobile within the sport. And I think it's some like tech bro, nascent Silicon Valley adjacent like mindset about it. But they have talked the talk. But it does not appear, Alex, that they will be able to walk the walk.
No, it doesn't. And just by coincidence, it so happens that we know somebody who in his newsletter, Extra Points, which you can find at extrapointsmb.com, reported late Tuesday night and in his newsletter on Wednesday morning about why Sacramento State has been unable to breach the realignment firewall and get an invitation to come up to FBS. Matt Brown joins us now on the program. Matt, it sounds like Sacramento State just wanted it a little too bad. They needed to play a little harder to get. Administrators didn't think it was cool that they were going around giving their number to everyone at the bar.
That is a good way of putting it. And this kind of thing happens in conference realignment when you have schools that are just so publicly thirsty and saying this is going to happen. We're telegraphing our intentions. Here's everything that we're doing. It tends to hurt you. And whether that's Tarleton State telling everybody and their brother what they want to be in FBS for the last 4 years and they still sit in FCS, whether that's New Haven telegraphing that they wanted to be in Division I and only got it because the NEC was going to fall apart if they didn't add anybody else. They got denied like 3 different times, whether that's Augustana, who's still in Division II after publicly declaring that they wanted to move up. All of that is a problem. The other problem is that besides the fact that you got a president who's getting on Reddit calling FCS football JV, which everybody is very excited to dunk on right now. But you also need to be able to tell the NCAA that you really have the money to make all of these major investments, because the game is more complicated and harder than it was in 2017 when Liberty got this exemption, given the way that that conference membership shapes the college football playoff revenue distributions and how governance is set up right now. And if you're dropping one number in public and maybe your application has some different numbers or some different timelines, you are going to get in trouble.
So the exception that you're talking about is to move up to FBS as an independent without conference affiliation. And what you have reported in Extra Points this morning as we record is that Sac State is going to leave the Big Sky, a very solid FCS conference, one of the best, puts multiple teams in the playoffs every year, and go independent in football and put the rest of their sports in the Big West. There's not a lot of FCS independents. I believe there are currently 2.
Yep.
And
Merrimack and Sacred Heart.
Titans
and
those aren't the sport.
Those aren't the company that Sac State seems to want to be keeping. So what is their game here? They think that that going indie makes it easier for them to eventually jump, assuming that nobody invites them?
They, as I understand it, are looking at the FCS independent situation as very temporary. Turns out, if you get on a bullhorn and tell everybody and their brother that you're trying to go FBS, and the Big Sky says you have to play football in this conference if you want to stay in this conference, they're eventually going to get tired of you. Like the Sacramento State, as I understand it, has asked if they could keep the rest of their sports in this league if they take football out, and we're told
Hell no.
very quickly.
Have you seen their basketball arena?
No,
It's a
no.
middle
It's
school
not even.
gym.
It's not about that. It's absolutely not about that.
It's not
to
about
me.
that. And to be fair to Sacramento State, that's been remodeled. They're not playing in a 700-person cubicle anymore. But
good.
I mean, it's not a lot bigger. But
that's beside the point.
Yeah, you can't stay in that league. So the Big West was at an odd number of teams. They have a bunch of other Cal State system schools in that league. It's going to be, I think, a rude awakening for Sacramento State basketball. Big West basketball is really pretty good. It's better than the Big Sky, and Sacramento State's been terrible. They just hired Mike Bibby. Google Mike Bibby. Arizona to learn why Mike Bibby was suddenly available for a job like this to find out more. But the Hornets are looking at this as temporary, right? Like they think they're going to be FBS one way or another in 2 or 3 years, and they think that they'll be able to cobble together an independent schedule for a year or two that could still put them in position to make the playoffs if the recruiting that Brendan Marion is putting together actually pans out. There'll be enough schools with open dates in October, November to pull something together. Do you want to do that for 5 years? Hell no. But they don't think they're going to need to do it for 5 years.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yep. All right.
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it does seem a little catty, but also I get it on the part of, let's say, the Pac-12 and the Mountain West, the two Western FBS conferences that clearly need new members.
Sure, but
you have but I get it. I get it. Like I get why you're not very into the school that doesn't seem to have that much money and seems to be, I don't know, difficult to deal with, possibly.
Right. Like there's just a dilution point. You know what I mean? Like if you're the Pac-12 or the Mountain West, but definitely the Pac-12, like there's just like a dilution point of your group of schools to me.
I think it's worth pointing out that the Mountain West had an opportunity to take an FCS school, and they did. And they took Davis, who most people in this industry expect to be playing FBS football in the next 5 years. UC Davis, for those who are unaware, is just a quick jaunt on the highway west of Sacramento. It is in that media market. It's like, 15 miles away. It's right there. These are crosstown rivals, and you pick the team that's a better school, that's larger, that has some more established enrollment. And the part of Sacramento State's hypothetical appeal is, hey, we're this big state school in a growing city that doesn't have a presence. Well, now the Mountain West already has that, and Sacramento State football has been very good recently. I want to say they won 12 games in 2022. They have a coach that people like. They expect to be competing for playoff bids right now. They're not adding anything that the other two leagues don't have, and they have a president that many people in college sports don't completely trust. And I have to reiterate, that matters a lot. Presidents do not typically stay at schools for 12 years. They're like athletic directors. They're like coaches. This is increasingly a short-term gig. But it's presidents that decide conference affiliation. It's presidents that vote on a bunch of this NCAA stuff. And presidents are petty and mortal and human, just like you and I. And if all other things being equal, if they don't like or trust the guy at the other end of the table, they're going to go with the person that they like a little bit more or trust a little bit more, have more in common with than somebody who they're worried is going to get on Reddit.
Matt, what they're going to do instead, the Pac-12, is, well, not yet official, but ESPN reports over the weekend that it's probably going to be Texas State.
Yeah.
And this has not been as open a secret as the Sacramento State wanting to go to FBS thing, because Sacramento State's been telling everyone, and I think Texas State has been a little quieter about it, though some Instagram storying by the school president also seems to have happened here in this case.
Kelly, Dr. Damphouse is also online. He's just online in a more positive, cheerleadery way than a shit talker.
Okay. What's the deal with Texas State? Why does the Pac-12 want Texas State?
They don't really, but the Pac-12 needs another team. And Texas State is, if you were to look at a current Sunbelt CUSA-ish team that had some growth potential, looking at the current options that exist, I think you could be forgiven for being talked into a school that has over 30,000 students. That's in a growing city in between two other really big growing cities, in a state where you need to recruit
That's
football
Austin
players.
and San Antonio.
Yep.
Yeah, it's basically smack in the middle. Of
As you are getting closer to a world where it's just one suburb all the way down between the two places. Since you're like, okay, they were good at football last year. They have a president who's really engaged and wants athletics to be successful. They're adding some more money. You're beginning to have actual Texas State fans. Are they going to be very competitive in the first year or two? Probably not. But can they get there and help you in some other sports? I think I don't say this to be disrespectful. I think if you squint and look at the other options, it makes sense, especially because the original plan for the Pac-12 was let's raid the American. And the math didn't pencil out on that. The TV deal is not going to be as good as I thought it was 6 months ago. The exit fees for leaving the American are very significant and travel is expensive. And then plan B was let's go take some other schools from the Mountain West. That's still tied up in litigation, but for either money reasons or ego reasons, that's not happening either. So then you go to plan C, and if you don't go in to get anybody from the American, you're not going to go get Sacramento State. I mean, tell me who's a more attractive candidate. New Mexico State? Like, I think I probably would rather have Texas State if I was the Pac-12 than too.
You do run short of options fairly quickly. Also, I think part of the reason for the urgency is that Texas State's buyout from the Sun Belt doubles from 5 million to 10 million on July 1st, something that Thamel mentioned in his story. Yeah, Matt, interesting that they haven't succeeded in getting, UNLV or Air Force, because it does seem like the Pac-12 would be a ultimately better place for both of them. How much credence do you give the idea that UNLV wouldn't go because they couldn't go without the University of Nevada, Reno?
I don't give a ton of credence to that, but what I have heard...
Didn't the governor, not the governor, but wasn't that like completely rendered moot? That line of thinking, like somebody within the state, I recall that.
That may be possible. My Adderall hasn't kicked in this morning. I'd have to double check. But what I can tell you is that I have heard from people with direct familiarity at UNLV that they have put the word out there that the only league that they're interested in joining is the Big 12. And I want to say it was the Las Vegas newspaper that reported Dan Mullen's staff's apparently telling recruits, if you stay here all 4 years, you'll be in the Big 12 at the end. And there have been people in the UNLV.
You first, Dan.
Yeah,
you first.
UNLV orbit that are saying, like, we feel really good about our chances to do that. I would say that is not true. And that UNLV has a lot of problems they got to fix before they can be in that kind of conversation. But one thing you learn as you cover conference realignment for a while, like the three of us have, is that some of the least reliable sources tend to be football coaches and people in football coaches' staffs. Coaches just be saying stuff.
They have nothing to do with this. They have as much to do with this as I do. Or you do.
Only instead of you, the coaches have a significantly higher incentive to be dishonest about it.
It's good stuff.
It's not even dishonest. It's like kind of just not being informed or being the last to be informed.
Sure. Yeah. I will say, not to toot my own horn here, maybe this has been the case for both of you. It is not uncommon as I write about some of these developments that coaches will call me and ask what's going on. And it's not because like I'm a super genius or anything. It's just because I talk to the consultants and presidents and some of the ADs and media people in that world more than a basketball or track coach does at Tarleton State.
Ancillary things going on here, kind of dominoes. Thamel reports that if Texas State goes, Louisiana Tech probably next to get the bump from Conference USA to the Sun Belt. That makes sense. Sun Belt, as we've talked about a lot, believes in geographic rivalry, and this would put them in league with ULM, with Louisiana at Lafayette. So makes sense to me. Perhaps then Tarleton State, the report says, up to Conference USA. So they would get what they want so badly, which is to join an FBS conference. And I guess everybody would be happy. Anything hit you, Matt, about those?
I mean, that lines up a lot with what I've heard. The one thing that I wrote this morning is I've also heard from some Sunbelt people that it's not a guarantee that if Texas State leaves before July 1st, it's not a lock that they're going to add somebody in the next 2 or 3 weeks. because the Sun Belt's like, look, we're in a position of strength. If we have an opening, we're going to get 10 schools that are interested, not just Tech in Western Kentucky, but a bunch of FCS institutions and potentially some other ones. And if we wait for a little bit, maybe instability elsewhere will free up other options. Like the school that I know a couple of ADs in the Sun Belt would love to have, if in a perfect world, would be ECU. And there are ECU fans that are like that would like that as well, knowing that, like, look, your true rivals, NC State, you're not going to be in the ACC anytime soon, but other places that you care about and that you want to beat are not in this league anymore. It's not the same American that you were in 5 or 6 years ago. That's not financially like feasible now because of the television money that the American gets and the buyouts and everything. But if Memphis leaves and things break a certain way, like that will be a conversation within Sunbelt circles. It's like, do we get Tech now who saves us some travel money but doesn't really change anything, or do we wait 9 months and see what happens? I don't
this
think
would
they've
put
decided
ECU
yet.
back with App State
And Southern Miss,
SoCon.
Yep. Meaningful baseball rivalries there. So I'm not saying like ECU to the Sun Belt confirmed. Like I'm saying I have heard that there is like there's not as much of a push to like, oh my God, we have to get something immediately or we're going to lose our schools. It's very different from what Sun Belt realignment looked like at the beginning of our careers when it was not nearly as strong of a league as it is now.
Frankly, hope it happens. I think ECU in the Sun Belt would be a really pleasant bit of conference realignment that would take the sport back to its roots a bit. Matt Brown, thank you so much for joining. ExtraPointsMB.com is where to sign up for the newsletter. I read it every day. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, friends.
Richard, we roll on this episode of Split Zone Duo. It's a newsy time in college sports because you probably noticed that since we have last been with you on sort of a news-centric episode, a federal judge approved the House settlement. Doesn't mean it's completely out of the woods. There are already, and there will probably continue to be some challenges to this thing, but college sports is moving ahead. This thing is, sort of the law of the land. It's the settlement of the land now, and it has already started to dominate the way that business is done in college football. We are joined here by a staff writer and a national college football reporter for The Athletic, Justin Williams. Justin's been very serious on the House settlement beat, in particular, how this thing that now governs the college football economy is actually being implemented. And he's written 2 stories that I'm real interested in just about the past week. I think you'll see how the headlines are related. One of the story's headlines is, quote, Power Conference commissioners voice confidence in House settlement. Our schools want rules. And then there is the next story by Justin at The Athletic. Return of the Bagman. NIL clearinghouse could revive paying college athletes under table. So if you're listening to this show, you probably know the basics, but in case you've gotten bored of settlement ball, maybe a good time to tune back in because the fireworks are already starting.
Because something actually happened.
As of July 1st, this is the way that it's going to work. And I think deals have already started to go to this clearinghouse. The $20.5 million per team thing. But increasingly, Justin, it seems like so much of this settlement and its intended effect on college sports is going to come down to the clearinghouse, the NIL approval office, basically, that is being run by Deloitte, the accounting firm. And it's going to be responsible for vetting all outside NIL deals to ensure that they are not, quote unquote, pay for play. Remember the House settlement money, schools give it directly to players, but collectives still insist that they're going to be around and play in a role in this thing. And I'm hearing from your stories both that the schools and conferences insist that the clearinghouse is going to have teeth. No more NIL pay for play, though I think it's silly to call it pay for play. It's just pay for work. But also that third parties seem to be ready to bring back the Bagman. So do you have any read on who's right?
No, and I don't know that anyone has a read yet on who's right. I mean, honestly, I think that's what's kind of the most interesting thing about how all this plays out. You have, the people who kind of are bought in on the settlement, right? Whether they help put it together or whether you're an administrator at a school and you do want some rules, you do want some regulations to try and get around this thing. I totally understand why they are championing it. And honestly, there's been a lot of work put into this. It could work the way that they want it to, or as a couple ATs have put it to me, even if it works a little bit, if it's a little bit better than what, the way things were before, that's progress in their mind. And they're probably right to some degree. But then, I think there's all these other questions of whether it's people in the industry, coaches, personnel, recruiting staffers, or these people outside the industry, collectives, agents, NIL lawyers that are skeptical. And maybe some of them are kind of rooting for it to fail or working for it to fail. And then I think there's others that are just like, we have 100 years of college football that suggests to me that not everyone's going to get on board and follow the rules. And so I think the next, few months, honestly, are going to be really telling of, does this thing start to work the way that it was intended to, or are we already seeing some cracks in it?
Justin, I think the difference is, to me, is that when I talk to people who are boots on the ground, they are much more skeptical of whether this will work versus the people who kind of were in the boardroom, so to speak, and kind of architected and crafted the work. Your point is very well taken, which is like, I think a lot of ADs are just wish it, you know what I mean? Like, just like, damn it, like, I hope it works kind of thing. Which is not to say that it shouldn't work. I think all three of us understand that, and I will speak for me and Alex here, that like, while me and Alex tend to be a lot more pro player, pro athlete, like at the end of the day, this system that we've done the last 4-ish years has not been good. And I think that your words about progress, I think, are really well taken, because like, it may not be perfect, it may not be NFL salary cap bulletproof, but like, it does have to be better than what we did for the last 3 or 4 years. Because I know that people roll their eyes when they hear athletic directors say like, this isn't sustainable anytime recently, but they're right. Like, they are right. This has not been sustainable.
And part of that is on the NCAA or the power conferences, right? Because for so long, they were fighting against that progress. And so that's how you go from, in a very short amount of time, all these athletes are getting a scholarship. And, despite the money coming in, there's a lot of people that were arguing, oh, that's plenty, room and board and free education, that's enough. Well, then it completely shifted to the NIL floodgates open, and there was kind of no middle ground of like finding kind of a reasonable or an agreed upon situation. It just went from all you get is a scholarship to completely wide open, millions of dollars, 7-figure deals for athletes. And so, yeah, I certainly understand and sympathize with both sides, because it feels like it went from not really, fair, or certainly giving the players the cut of the money that was coming in, to then it just went completely kind of crazy and unsustainable, like you said. And the hope, and I do think there was some good faith efforts here to, the House of Not to try and kind of fix or put some guidelines in place. Some of it was also like, the NCAA power conferences didn't want to lose in court again. But there was definitely some efforts of like, hey, let's do this. I think the question that I have, and that a lot of people have, is can that change the century-long history of college sports and college football, where there are always those people looking for an edge, looking to find a loophole, looking to cut a corner. I think that's a really tough thing to just completely, move away from or switch the direction of, just because this settlement passed a week ago.
Justin, the interpersonal part of this is maybe what's most interesting to me. We all know Deloitte type people, consultants. I'm sure we've got many either Deloitte employees or KPMGs or PricewaterhouseCoopers or whatever employees. A lot of college football fans tend to work at those kinds of places, or maybe did earlier in their career. And one thing that I know about that type of person is that, it's sort of a working stiff, like we're all just, it's Deloitte employees are everywhere from like 23-year-old postgrads to like, 50, 60-year-old, 70-year-old like principals who have never played football and are not really boots on the ground at all in the world of college football. And I think in one of your previous stories, you were talking to player personnel people who literally said, fuck Deloitte. Like, who are these people? Who are these people to like get in the way of my deals? And I wonder how that's going to go.
Alex, one thing I will say, and Justin, I don't know if you've heard any different. I think the Deloitte thing is like being like way overstated.
Is
like, yeah, man. Like I as I understand it personally, like yes, Deloitte has organized the infrastructure, and yes, Deloitte is going to be basically the one-eyed ogre that you're going to complain about. But like, I personally think any focus on Deloitte, the entity, is a distraction pointing away from the folks basically at the CSC, Brian Seeley and company, who are
the College Sports Commission.
Yes.
Which is what, Richard?
the College Sports Commission is basically the thing that is going to run all of this, and the College Sports Commission was put together by the power conferences, and the power conference commissioners are the ones who were integral in the search to name Brian Seeley the CEO of the College Sports Commission. So what I mean is that anybody focusing on like the Deloitte of it all, which I know is just kind of funny because who the hell is Deloitte? Like, I think it kind of misses the point of like, if you're going to be mad at anything in this whole infrastructure, it ain't Deloitte.
Well, I actually do think it matters sort of because of what you're saying, though. And Justin, I'm curious for your thought about this. The point is that kind of a third party, even a fourth party, if the College Sports Commission is the third party, has been deputized to look over all collective deals, basically, and has been pretty clear. I think Yahoo reported that the vast majority of NIL deals the last few years would not pass under the settlement.
70%
from collectives, right?
So,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it is like just kind of this very, very outside group that is being brought in to say no to things or to say yes to things. And I'm curious, just if you've sensed extra animosity or skepticism on that ground. It's like, who are these fucking consultants to come in here and tell my wide receiver that he can't have $250,000 from the collective?
I think it's that, because, you know, Richard's right too. It's not as if Deloitte is going to be saying like, this wide receiver suspended because, you know, we don't approve the deal that he likes. Like, Deloitte is the mechanism that is all this is flowing through. But then that also, I think if you're a GM or a coach or whoever, an agent, a booster, and, you know, the boogeyman Deloitte is the one that allegedly has like, you know, green light, red light on this thing. I think it's very easy for these people who have dedicated their life to, you know, the sport or college sports in some fashion to be like, why the hell do these people get to come in and tell me what I can pay a wide receiver or what I can earn as an athlete? And so, yeah, I think it was just, maybe it's a little bit of a misdirection, or maybe there's too much attention being put on Deloitte's role in all of this. But I think it was just this thing that people in the industry kind of looked at sideways as like, or, you know, why do they get to come in and tell us how to do something that they know nothing about?
One of the other things that I'm intrigued by is that the clearinghouse kind of seems like its purpose in life is to ban the Texas Techs of the world. I know that you have done, I think, on the ground reporting in Lubbock. You were pretty early at the Athletic to report on Cody Campbell and Texas Tech bringing in the Brinks truck to build their athletic department, really, from softball to football and everywhere in between. You know, if you're a guy like that, the big Texas Tech booster, this whole system is kind of a call out on you, basically. It's telling you to stop and saying that like your explicit business model is not going to be allowed anymore. But, you know, you're a proud guy. And it doesn't have to be Cody Campbell at Texas Tech. It could be his lesser equivalent at pretty much any school. Like, do you think that you're going to find bagmanning to be beneath you because of your reputation and how publicly you've been able to be the last few years? Have you gotten any sense of what the thought process will be for these kind of whale donors who have thrown their weight around the last few years and now, at least technically are not going to be allowed to?
Yeah, I mean, like the Cody Campbell Texas Tech thing specifically, that's an interesting case, right? Because he was, you know, involved in this potential presidential commission. And I think like a lot of what he's arguing for is to try and kind of lift up even the non-revenue Olympic sports. But I think he's also someone that he clearly loves Texas Tech athletics. And he was like, in this old system, if I'm allowed and, you know, kind of the people in my circle are allowed to help athletics in a way that, you know, didn't used to be allowed, then clearly he was gonna be all in. I also think he's probably someone that wants a settlement to work and wants the rules and regulations to fall in place.
He very much does. He very much does.
But your point is well taken, that in general, that idea of, you know, big time boosters, before there were a lot of schools, a lot of boosters, a lot of donors that, you know, wouldn't like go against the rules, that, you know, they weren't going to get involved with paying players under the table or doing something that would get violations. The NIL era kind of like removed the shame and like the potential violations of that whole process. And so me, it's really interesting to think that could the settlement kind of quickly like reestablish, you know, those regulations and guidelines? Because really the past, 4 or 5 years, like legitimized, but also kind of streamlined that process. It made bag dropping like an art. It made it easier. Now you know, have a booster who before wasn't allowed to interact with the school or the players in a direct way. now they can, and now there's agents involved. There's a lot of like mechanisms in place that before it was very like, meet in a parking lot and hand off a duffel bag of cash or something like that. So I do wonder if in this weird way, like the House settlement is trying to wipe away what the last couple of years have, helped people do even better. And now they're just going to be easier going under the table. I also don't, maybe I'm wrong. I think an important thing to remember in all this is we're really talking about, when you're talking about over the cap and under the table, maybe 20 programs, right? Like it's really that top echelon of teams. Most of them are trying to figure out, how do we get to 20.5 million for rev share? Or can we even get, close to that if you kind of go down the line? But there are those programs at the top who are like, Ohio State spent 20 million on their football roster last year. The AD publicly said that. Now we're expecting them to kind of go backwards.
Well, I think that the one thing, Justin, like the thing that I've heard from ADs have been pretty open with like, hell yeah, we front loaded the roster for this pre-cap portion that we've had from like January to July. Yeah, hell yeah, we front loaded the roster. So I think that some of the number goes down stuff is just like, now everything will be compliant with the cap, theoretically.
He's making air quotes as he talks.
Yeah. Theoretically. Versus what has come over the last 6 months, which was everybody like trying to get it in like right under the wire, which kind of bumps up some of the numbers just sort of artificially.
Justin, I want to go back to something you just said, because I'm curious about how you think it's going to work. The schools that are not going to clear the 20.5 mil, what will happen to their collectives? Because I think it's obvious that if you're a school that wants to pay more, your collective is going to stay around and try to be that marginal boost over that cap. But if I'm a school that, my entire booster community and the athletic department and the central campus, we think we've got 10 million to pay athletes. Is every dollar that was going to the collective, is the collective now just getting out of the way or just doing a wire transfer to the school and saying, take it from here? Or are you going to have these collective types still trying to be actively involved in roster management, cap management in some way?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are going to roll up into the athletic department, whether like formally we're actually bringing you in-house, or just, hey, whatever you had in the bank account, like send it over because we need it now. And I know that happened at some schools, like whatever the collective kind of had in the coffers, if they weren't, a lot of them were put out in those front loaded deals like we talked about. But if there's anything left over, like send it our way because we need it. And I do think, maybe they'll still exist for like the branding purpose, because a lot of fans got used to, hey, I give monthly, or maybe I just interact with this collective. So I think they might kind of keep that infrastructure in place. But a lot of them, I think, are just working hand in hand, even more than they were before, with the athletic departments of like, anything that we get, we're giving to you to kind of get to that 20.5. Maybe they do some work for some like above board over the cap deals where they're helping facilitate an agreement with like a local company or something like that. But the goal of the settlement for a lot of people that were involved was to totally rein in collectives. And, for some schools that's happened. They're, like I said, they're just going to become part of the athletics department. I think for those top schools, that's where it kind of is going to be interesting. How do they operate? Are they completely separate, or are they doing those, above board deals? Are they trying to find a way to go under the table? And that's the other thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that those top schools, there's going to be like a mad dash of recruiting staffers or boosters to like, we're already cheating, let's do something wrong right away. I don't think, maybe I'm naive and maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that's the way it works. I do think it's going to be like the way it used to be on an individual basis. The thing I always keep thinking about is, let's fast forward to the first transfer portal window, and you have a player that a school really wants, and they put together a rev share package for them, and they do whatever they can, and then the player or the handler or the agent or whoever comes back and says, yeah, we'll come if you can, add an extra 100,000 on top of that, or give us a little extra, and yes, we're going to commit to your school. That's where I think some of these programs, coaches, staffers, boosters, whoever, are going to like have this kind of internal monologue of like, all right, how do we do this? Maybe we don't have more revenue share we can give. Maybe we've done everything we can above board. If we really want this player, do we just, all right, we'll figure out a way to make it happen? Or do they say, no, we're going to kind of play by the rules? And I think that's like the big question for all of this is, when it really comes to those moments, does the settlement work, or do people find a way to get around it?
It's really good. Justin, I also want to say it's kind of a word of compliment, but you can also share any thoughts that you would have. And if I'm on the mark about this, I do feel like a lot of what anyone thinks is going to happen with this stuff sort of depends on who you talk to. And because college sports is very big, people talk to different people. So if you talk to player personnel staffers, they're going to be of that, try to stop me, like Deloitte, like get out of my way. Like you're not going to be able to rein us in. If you talk to athletic directors or lawyers who are on the settlement, they're like, yeah, we've got a system. Like this thing's going to hold up. It's going to be great. Or if you talk to a collective leader, it's like, well, the collectives are still going to have a really important role. People are sleeping on that. We've become an essential cog in the machine. I appreciate that you seem to have talked to all of these people, and your conclusion seems to be, I don't exactly know who's going to be right out of the three of them. And unsatisfying as that is, I guess we just have to wait and see. Probably, like you say, for the first transfer portal window.
Yeah, I mean, all the motivations are different, right? The thing I kept thinking, talking to whether it's ADs or administrators, people that really were on board with the settlement, and they were kind of frustrated about how many people were undermining it quickly. I get that. But then if you also think like, if you're a coach or an assistant or a recruiting staffer, whatever, you don't keep your job. You don't get a promotion because you follow the rules, right? Like you get a promotion or you keep your job because you win. And so if you're GM of a coach, you're not thinking like, man, I'm going to do everything by the book and then the athletic director or whoever is going to reward me. You're thinking I have to figure out a way to win. And if I don't do this, someone else will. So people are coming at it from totally different perspectives. And that's why I think it's hard to say, yes, this person is right and this person is wrong, or this person is going to be right of how this plays out and this person is way off base. It'll probably play out that way, but I think we just have to see kind of how it looks again a few months, a year, a couple years from now.
Justin Williams, thank you so much for coming on Split Zone Duo, staff writer at The Athletic, where you can read his work. I had fun. We'll check back in with you about how this is all going, I'm sure.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Richard, we roll on. As the summer travel season is upon us, you should be sure to follow Nokian Tires on social media, get tire safety tips, interactive content, and occasional chances to win tires. We do those for Split Zone Duo listeners quite regularly. We've had some very excited winners recently. You can find them at Nokian Tires NA, that's tires with a Y, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. And don't forget, if you go to nokiantires.com/SCD, you can enter there to win a set of Nokian tires. Nokian is going to draw for our first winner of this new season at the end of the month. The website also features some really good info about picking the right tires for you. They should be Nokians, and you can find a retailer that will sell you Nokian Tires products. When you're traveling, you want to be on great tires. You also want to look good. And fortunately, we got a partner to help you with that too. Home Field is releasing new premium vintage, officially licensed, thoughtfully made college sports apparel basically all the time. I'm not even a college baseball fan, really, but I'll tell you, I look at Home Field's drops this time of year, and I think very seriously about becoming one. Go to homefieldapparel.com, use the code SZD20 for 20% off your first order. Why pay full price? And if past live shows of ours are any indication, we're going to see a whole lot of Home Field shirts in person the weekend of August 23rd in Raleigh, North Carolina. It is the Sports Podcast Festival with Stephen Godfrey, our co-founder, and the two of us. We are headlining a night that is going to have special guests and great shows abounding. Go to www.splitzoneduolive.com and get tickets. You can use the code SPF25 to buy one ticket, get one half off. It's a great deal. Also, you just heard him on this show, but Matt Brown and Extra Points are going to be in Raleigh this weekend as well, including the Friday night, the night before. It's called Night Zero because this is week 0 of college football. Raleigh's the place to be for week 0 in general. Extra Points is going to be presenting a great show on Friday evening in Cary at Bond Brothers East with Hand in the Dirt. More friends of ours. It'll be a whole great weekend in the Triangle. We, Godfrey, Matt, all very excited to see you there.
Alex, death, taxes, everybody still not being able to figure out or coalesce around a college football playoff format. You would think after 150 years, we could figure out a way to crown a champion that makes pretty much everybody okay with it. We are yet to do that. Previously in this saga, basically the Big Ten and the SEC have more weight in voting and revenue distribution in the college football playoff than the other leagues. It has seemed like the SEC and the Big Ten were both on the same page about an automatic qualifier heavy 16-team playoff, 14 or 16-team playoff. I have thought for a while that it was actually going to settle on 14 teams versus 16 teams. It seemed like they moved through the 14-team thing and onto the 16-team thing. Again, very heavily automatic qualifier based. However, at the end of May, in Destin at SEC spring meetings, it became clear that the SEC's bureaucrat class had not exactly cleared an automatic qualifier heavy format with the guys who really matter, the coaches. So it seems like the coaches got in the room in Destin. I wasn't there, but this is what was reported happened. And the coaches basically said, we don't think an automatic qualifier heavy format is good. We don't think that a devaluation of the conference championship or conference championship weekend is good. In an automatic qualifier format, it seemed like things were pointing towards a conference championship weekend that was actually like a play-in sort of format where like 6 would play 3 and 5 would play 4 for the 3rd and 4th automatic qualifier spots theoretically. And SEC 1 and 2 would sit it out. It seems like the coaches were not exactly so thrilled about that. So it seems like the SEC has made something of an about face and has gone a little bit towards what the other conferences are in favor of, which is a 16-team college football playoff format that is 5 automatic qualifiers, only 5, 4 power conference champions, 1 group of 5 highest ranked
as is now
champion. Yes, plus 11 at-larges to make 16. That does not exactly jive with where the Big Ten is right now, which is, again, an automatic qualifier heavy 16-team format, which would be like 4 for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 or 3 for the ACC, 2 or 3 for the Big 12, highest ranked group of 5 champion, and then at large from there. So it seems right now where we're at is that the Big Ten is sort of on an island, and the Big Ten is not happy about this. The SEC is sort of about face, and it seems like the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have to go to the mat on this. So as far as I'm concerned about it, as I have said for years, an automatic qualifier heavy format is ridiculous. It is anti-competitive, and it is reminiscent, or it is clear that to me is saying that you value revenue over being a strictly competitive enterprise. It seems like the SEC coaches tend to agree, even though they're not going to actually go to 9 conference games. They're actually going to stay at 8. So we remain, Alex, in a ecosystem that is completely ridiculous as it pertains to the postseason and the arguments about it. Apparently, there's a December 1st deadline about getting this right for 2026. But who are we kidding, Alex? Both of us know that they're not going to hit that. They always blow through their deadlines.
So essentially, the SEC coaches think that if there's too many auto qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC, that it dilutes the value of winning the SEC. That's basically, which it kind of does.
But
it's also like they would have some self-interest, the SEC would, in going with this anyway, because it's more teams making the playoff, or more, probably not even more teams making it, but more teams being guaranteed spots in the playoff.
Right, but where I think you're close, but not exactly. Because remember, the SEC coaches do not want to go to 9 conference games. The SEC coaches are down with staying at 8 conference games. Remember, where the Big Ten is at, as it's been reported, is the Big Ten is basically saying, like, you guys are going to stay at 8 conference games while we, the Big Ten, are at 9 conference games. Like, I didn't jive with that. That doesn't jive with us. That's ridiculous. Also, remember, there was that like planned SEC Big Ten, not planned, but rumored SEC Big Ten challenge, basically in football. And the Big Ten's like, we're not doing that if you guys don't go to 9 conference games. That's ridiculous. And remember also that the Big Ten the SEC circulated its like strength of schedule documents at SEC meetings that show what we know, that the bottom of the SEC or the middle of the SEC is relatively better than the middle of the Big Ten. The SEC says that means that they don't have to go to 9 conference games because the conference games that they play are hard enough. So again, I don't want to give SEC coaches all of the lion's share of the credit for trying to maintain some sort of competitive enterprise here, but they do deserve some of it because, in my opinion, what the SEC's bureaucrat class and the Big Ten is pitching is something that is, in my opinion, completely anti-competitive, which is strict invitational.
There are revolutionaries everywhere for those with the eyes to see them.
Right. And
it sounds like the SEC head coaches, those are our friends everywhere. And we appreciate them creating this popular front against, corporatized playoff expansion. Richard, my only promise is that I will never again on this show proffer any kind of a take about whether the SEC should go to 9 conference games. I try to have a point of view on most things we talk about, but shit or get off the pot with regards to that. I'm over
getting
it.
You out of bed, is it?
I'm over it. I will not cover it. I will not discuss it whenever it happens or doesn't happen. We are on at least year 7 or 8 of this. And I'm guessing longer because nothing starts just when I start thinking about it. So do it or don't, but move it along and stop making it the rest of our problem as far as I'm concerned.
They are, as we speak, in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a conference commissioners meeting in Asheville right now, your favorite city.
I like Asheville. Yeah.
And they are discussing this. There is not expected to be a decision made out of this meeting, but there is going to be complaining and there will certainly be whispers. The Big Ten is not happy right now. I think the Big Ten feels a little left at the altar. I think the Big Ten thought that there was going to be a state of affairs that there isn't right now. And so they're kind of sitting holding the bag a little bit because they're saying, well, we're being made to look like a bunch of assholes here.
We're going to see how this unfolds. Richard, one other bit of news that we wanted to go over this week. Just in the last couple of days, Cal's athletic director, Jim Knowlton, announced his retirement. And why are we talking about an athletic director retirement? Those happen all the time. Well, because I think it's inseparable from a pretty interesting development, which is that according to, I believe, Pete Thamel of ESPN was the first to report, Ron Rivera is now not just the general manager of Cal, which we've known for a little while, but he is now in the Andrew Luck way in charge of Cal football. Justin Wilcox reports to him. So if you're looking towards the possible future of what the general manager model, of an empowered general manager model, might look like in college sports, I guess you just got to look to the Bay Area because there are 2 in the big conferences that we know of that are doing it like this. And it's Stanford with Andrew Luck, and now it's Cal with Ron Rivera.
Well, remember, Alex, and we talked about this on a previous, I believe, Substack subscriber episode, which we will add in the show notes here. We talked about kind of the state of play at Cal, and it was basically a bunch of Cal boosters, and this was, 2 months ago maybe, had gotten together and basically looked across the Bay and said, hey, we want what they being Stanford, have, which is an empowered general manager that runs the entire show kind of similar to the classic professional NFL model. And they were withholding donations from the athletic department basically holding the athletic department hostage unless that was going to happen. There are some other problems with Jim Knowlton, including a devaluation of football. I think a lot of people in the Cal ecosystem believe that Jim Knowlton's inaction is the reason why they are in the situation that they are in, which is kind of being, again, left at the altar of conference realignment. And a lot.
Also, they had scandals too.
Yeah,
they had a couple of things in different sports that I think he deserved some heat for and some skepticism over. Both football, swimming was one, and I wonder if that contributed as well.
Sure, but I think that look, at the end of the day, I think Cal people were worried about getting left at the altar again in 2030 or 2030-ish when we do this whole realignment thing again, because spoiler alert, folks, we are going to do it again in like 4 or 5 years. And I think they're worried about not being in proper position when that happens. So And this is where I think this is really interesting, Alex. We took a question on Splits on Dual Lunch Break, which is also in the feed for premium subscribers by the time you're listening to this podcast, that what's interesting here is that both Andrew Luck and Ron Rivera, as empowered GMs who run the entire show, are treasured alums of their football programs.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, or the thing I think me and you will be monitoring here, which is what the question asker asked on lunch break, is can you do this where the GM is not?
Is some guy.
Yeah. Where the GM.
Or some girl.
Yeah. Where the GM is just some person. Are we going to see that? And that is what I think is going to be really interesting about how this goes over the course of the sport.
I would agree. And I think that the immediate term for Cal, just the next year or two, is also interesting if you just want to take the micro instead of the macro. Cal had, as we did talk about on that episode for subscribers a couple months back, just an insane portal exodus over the course of the spring. I mean, like unusual and unusually concentrated on offense and at the skill positions in particular. I think it's their top 9 rushers from last year.
And their tight end.
Top
and
8.
A tight end.
Yeah, the rushers, they're not all just gone. They all portaled. They all left to go to other places. And for the immediate term, I just think this is really interesting. I remember maybe a year ago, I think when we were trying to pick a coach in the ACC who might not be there a year out, I thought it might be Justin Wilcox, because my idea was, well, Justin Wilcox might have already had his best days at Cal, and he didn't really sign up to be the head coach of an ACC program when he went there, and when he reportedly turned down, or at least didn't show a ton of interest in the Oregon job several years ago at this stage. He also, I really don't think, signed up to be a guinea pig in kind of the new general manager model of the sport, though I wouldn't presume to know anything about his relationship with Rivera. Just lots going on with Cal that is certainly a little bit less turbulent than what's been going on with Stanford, for instance, where you got to fire a coach kind of around spring ball, but enough where I think we're both a little bit worried about what's going to happen to Cal football in 2025. And if we're right, then it's going to be on Ron Rivera to figure out what happens in 26 and beyond.
Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day here, it seems like the boosters won or got what they wanted in an all politics or local kind of way. What does buyer's remorse look like, though, if this decision doesn't? Because if they're bad this year again and they get rid of Justin Wilcox and Ron Rivera is able to get his guy in, at what point in time do people sour on Ron Rivera if it doesn't work? How long do you think Ron Rivera's rope is or leash is in the job?
And will general managers, I assume the answer is yes, get the same level of public heat that head coaches do when things are going bad, or that certain offensive coordinators do? There's only a few places where I feel like we've seen coordinators really get massive public uproar about them. I'm talking like the Ferences at Iowa.
Oh, that happens. That happens all the time. What do you mean?
This is the thing is, I want to be clear about what I mean. I think there's probably 25-ish programs in the country where the fans are organized and knowledgeable enough en masse where you're going to get like fire the coordinator chants at a game. Maybe not even 25.
Oh, I think that's way more than that.
You think so? I don't think that Maryland fans could string together a fire the coordinator chant.
No,
personally.
People are pissed off their coordinator.
Anyway, what I'm getting at is, will there be fire the GM chants? Will the student body be knowledgeable enough to know to chant for the general manager's head and to assign blame between the coach and the GM? These are just the things I think about, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah, it's that to me, as far as Cal football is concerned, like the long tail of this decision is just going to be fascinating. How is it that you assign blame to a GM is curious, but all of this is makes clear to me that there is a shift of balance of power here that's more than just like coach to GM, because it also includes AD. I mean, what AD do you know now that's going to get an opportunity to hire a third football coach, right?
Yeah, never.
It doesn't really happen. So where this is all going in this mix, because I believe, and not entirely sure, but I believe Ron Rivera reports to the school president, I believe. So
Yeah.
it's AD power versus GM power versus their power over the football program and coach power. There's a big shift happening, and there's a big bad term, but there's a big realignment happening, or at least we're on the cusp of it, that I think we're going to have to pay attention to here.
And I am interested, even, chanting aside, and sort of where the assignment of credit and blame for things is going to start to fall. Like, take it away from Cal, go to Oklahoma, where Cal's best player went in this offseason. Like, if Oklahoma has a great year this year, are we, and by we I mean the collective college football media, going to credit Jim Nagy, their general manager, for that? Or are we going to credit Brent Venables for it? Or are they going to share it, like they supposedly share roster building responsibilities at Oklahoma? In addition to all the things that we've talked about before about how this might change coach compensation, coach time commitments, things like that. Who gets the glory? Who gets the blame? Going to be a new thing to follow as we go through this era of general manager growth in college football. Richard, that's our show. Thanks everyone for subscribing at www.splitzoneduo.com. We appreciate you. Great time to do it. Get a free month if you do an annual subscription. Great time right before the season to get started. We have some specials coming for you that are actually already in that feed, and more coming over the next couple of weeks. And of course, with you all season long there. Richard, we'll see you very soon. Back with you next week.